Dames en here, die akademiese prosesie sal binnekort inbeweeg. U word versoek om asseblief op te staan.
Bomma le bontate, molokoloko wa diruteri o tla tsena mo nakong e kopana. Le kgopelwa ho ema. Ladies and gentlemen, the academic procession will enter shortly. You're kindly requested to stand.
By the powers vested in me, I hereby constitute this assembly as a legal congregation of the University of Pretoria. During this assembly, degrees with all the associated rights and privileges will be conferred on the candidates whose names in the program. You may please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, we request you to join us in silent prayer or meditation to give thanks for the achievements of our students. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the spring graduation ceremony held here at the University of Pretoria's Faculty of Humanities, where today we will honor and celebrate graduates from across the undergraduate and postgraduate fields of study in this faculty. May I add a special welcome to the Dean of the Faculty, Professor Kevin Thomas, the Deputy Deans, Professor Innocent Pikarai, and Professor Zita Mokomane. A warm welcome also to the Deputy Director for Student Systems, Mr. Dino Swanepoel, our heads of schools, heads of departments, supervisors, lecturers, and colleagues. We also like to welcome our Student Representative Council member. Most importantly, I would like to welcome our esteemed graduates and their parents, families, partners. Without our students' outstanding efforts and support of their family, colleagues, and partners, we would not be here today. Today is a day on which you can feel extremely proud. Congratulations to each and every one of you. Today we will be conferring 153 degrees, of which no less than 29 degrees are doctoral degrees. At the University of Pretoria, we regard the study of humanities as the best way to understand ourselves, others, our local and global environment. Graduates from the University of Pretoria's Faculty of Humanities can proudly state that they've earned a quality degree from one of the oldest and most established humanities faculties in South Africa. This comprehensive faculty boasts 19 undergraduate degrees programs, allowing students to tailor-make coursework from 400 different course options and take up vibrant opportunities for creative engagement, supported by world-class facilities, our established resources, and world-class lecturers. Built on a solid historic base, the faculty offers programs and courses that blends academic and real-world experiences, preparing our graduates to excel in an increasing diverse, multilingual, interconnected, and technologically driven world. Moreover, continuous curriculum renewal is prioritized to ensure that graduates are equipped to add exceptional value to local and global communities, helping to address global challenges such as environmental crisis, cultural conflicts, social justice, and ethical dilemmas in a technology development space. The faculty is recognized through international rankings, such as the Times Higher Education Subject Rankings that were released in January this year. The university was ranked number 2 in South Africa in the narrow subject areas such as archaeology, art, performing arts and design, history, and philosophy. Recently, the university established the Interdisciplinary School of Psychology, a collaborative effort between the Faculty of Humanities, Economic and Management Sciences, and Education to optimize the synergies between the fields of psychology, educational psychology, and industrial psychology. There is much energy and excitement behind this effort, and we are confident that the university will reach even greater heights going forward. The Department of Philosophy is playing a major role in the national and international discourse around the ethics of AI, artificial intelligence. This department is home to one of the faculty's A-rated researchers, and we expect to see the transdisciplinary work here they are engaging in going from strength to strength. Several of the departments in the Faculty of Humanities produce creative outputs in the form of musical compositions, artworks, performances, collections of poetry, and such like. In 2019, the Department of Higher Education and Training introduced a formal system to recognize and subsidize creative outputs. This recognition underscores that creative work can carry as much academic rigor and intellectual value as traditional research outputs such as journal articles, books, conference proceedings. The latest Creative Outputs report published by the Department of Higher Education and Training, and the one for 2023, shows that the University of Pretoria has produced among the highest number of such outputs. The report indicates that the university consistently produced high-quality creative research outputs and successfully met the policy criteria. The high proportion of units accrued suggests strong participation and performance in creative research. Our message to students. Given that we have celebrated Women's Month in South Africa this past August, a few days ago, I would like to leave our graduating students with a reference to a well-known South African poet and author, Angie Krog. Krog, who recently published her latest book, Blood's Inner Rhyme, an autobiographical novel views art and the humanities as essential tools for social justice, political activism, and exploring complex human experiences, particularly through language and narrative. We are proud that the University of Pretoria, we could be part of your story up to this point. We hope that you will not forget UP as you go on from here. When you receive your degree today, a new chapter begins in your life. While there will no doubt be unexpected plots, twisting, and a couple of cliffhangers ahead in your life, perhaps, maybe, hopefully not, some red herring here and there, the story your life tells will ultimately be up to you. So as we say, make today matter. I encourage you to take up in a grand adventure, and I wish you well in your future endeavors. Thank you. I now request the Dean to introduce to me the candidates present whose names appear in the program.
Mr. Vice Principal, the supervisors will now introduce the doctoral candidates.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Samantha Benny, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Exploring Perceptions of Restorative Justice Implementation, Insights from Facilitators and Offenders at 2 South African Correctional Centres, prepared under my supervision and with Prof. Karen Boyens as co-supervisor. In her thesis, the candidate explored and described the perceptions of restorative justice facilitators about the implementation of restorative justice in 2 selected South African correctional centres. Furthermore, the candidate investigated the experiences of offenders who participated in the restorative justice programs presented in the correctional centres. The candidate used John Braithwaite's reintegrative shaming theory, Paul McCold and Ted Wachtel's conceptual theory of restorative justice, Howard Zer's restorative justice framework, and Yuri Bronfenbrenner's bioecological systems theory to create an integrated restorative justice approach for the corrections environment. Through a qualitative research approach, the study revealed that although restorative justice has a distinctly positive impact on offenders, various improvement measures would enhance restorative justice programs in corrections. The candidate thus created the Correctional Centre Restorative Justice Framework to enhance the facilitation of restorative justice programs in South African correctional centres. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Michelle Ron Black, who has complied with the requirements of the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled African Cosmic Complexity, Food Production and the Situation of Metabolic Crisis, prepared under my supervision. In their thesis, the candidate critically reimagines the organizational character of food systems in relation to the colonial legacy and ecological impact of industrial agriculture. The work argues that the effects of industrial agriculture can be traced back to a definitively Eurocentric approach to order in terms of how the nature of being is understood. Using a novel method, the work proffers an alternative approach to order termed Afrinosis by interrogating the moral value of microcosmic life from an African cosmic complexity perspective. As a generative response to the impossible call to reconceptualize, reorganize, and reorient agroecosystems towards the mutual flourishing of people, the planet, and cosmos, the thesis develops practical political strategies for contributing the possibility of a regenerative food system on Afrinostic terms. The thesis succeeds in contributing a novel approach to food systems transition thinking. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations. Well done.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce you to Eva Tiwombolenji Madalitso Chikawatwa, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Visualizing Mbona Religious Beliefs and Practices, a visual, cultural, artistic co-production with the custodians of Kulupfi and associated rain shrines in Sanji, Malawi, 2022 to 2025. This was prepared under my supervision and with Professor Jakub Beyers of the Department of Religious Studies in the Faculty of Theology as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate reflected on the role of the visual in research and documentation by examining the power relations of the visual, oral, and written towards heritage preservation using visual cultural theories. The project aimed to visualize the Mbona beliefs and practices to strike a balance among the three for heritage sustainability. The study organized the data using Ninian Smart's 7 dimensions of religion. It employed Clifford Geertz's definition of religion, Talal Assad's critique thereof, and the African traditional religions framework, along with participants' views, to examine the Mbona culture as a religion. The candidate developed an experimental research approach, the meta-picture data collection technique, which balances textual, oral, and visual elements of heritage while prioritizing community involvement. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Tatiwa Webster Chikengeja, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Adverse Incorporation and Social Exclusion in Harare, an analysis of spatial design, mobility, and accessibility of low-income groups in Harare's southern suburbs, prepared under my supervision. In his thesis, the candidate conducted a critical evaluation of the detrimental impact of adverse incorporation and social exclusion of low-income communities in the southern suburbs of Harare. He examined the persistent spatial inequalities rooted in urban planning, which government failures and political manipulation have exacerbated. His study elucidates these communities' challenges, including inadequate mobility, limited accessibility to essential services, and systemic exclusion from socio-economic opportunities. The thesis presents significant insights into urban poverty and advocates for a paradigm shift towards inclusive urban design and equitable resource access. It effectively contributes a novel perspective to urban governance and social justice discourse in African cities, culminating in policy recommendation for sustainable urban development. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidates.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Elmine Claessens, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled A Hybrid Approach Towards Inclusive Social Work Practice in South Africa, prepared under my supervision. In this mixed method study, she explored how social workers in South Africa use technology in their practice and how a hybrid approach, integrating digital tools with face-to-face services, can make social work practice more inclusive. To conceptually frame a thesis, she drew on the technology acceptance model, together with Nancy Fraser's theory of social justice. The findings indicate that the digital divide, shaped by socioeconomic and infrastructural inequalities, affects both social workers and service users, and is a major barrier to equitable social service delivery. The findings further show that a carefully designed hybrid approach can promote inclusion in social service delivery. The thesis contributes guidelines for social workers and organizations on how to adopt and integrate technology with in-person services. These include recommendations on ethics, organizational management and training, government policy, sustainability, social justice advocacy, intersectoral partnerships, and preparing future social workers for hybrid practice. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Graham Dampier, who has complied with requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Responsibility and Reciprocation on the Principles of an Ubuntu Theory of Equality, prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidate drew on the African philosophical tradition to articulate and defend a new theory of economic justice. Such a theory includes a currency, an account of what should be distributed to people, and a principle, an account of how much each person should receive. Regarding the currency, the candidate argues that a state should ensure that people have resources to enable them to support and care for others. And regarding the principle, he contends that all should receive a sufficient share of these resources, with no one receiving so much as to impede such relationships across class divides. The candidate defends this theory of economic justice by arguing that globally dominant theories, which are from the Western liberal tradition, are counterintuitive in ways that his is not. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Jeline de Villiers, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Arts with a thesis titled The Continued Silencing of Cape Town's History of Enslavement as Viewed Through the Lens of Leeuwenhof, prepared under the supervision of Professor Sheena O'Connell. In her thesis, the candidate centers her critique on the exhibitions at the Leeuwenhof Slave Quarters Remembrance Gallery. The study examines the symbolic and historical meanings of Leeuwenhof within the broader context of addressing Cape Town's history of enslavement, a city still shaped by the traumas of colonialism, enslavement, and apartheid. It argues that Leeuwenhof's evolution from a 17th century market garden to the current residence of the Western Cape Premier offers a critical lens on this enduring trauma. Grounded in post-colonial theory and memory studies, the thesis interrogates the production of knowledge through exhibitions and archival sources, highlighting the power dynamics that inform public history. It questions selective memory and historical silences, while foregrounding the diverse identities of enslaved individuals, resisting their reduction to anonymous, essentialized group. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Walt Janse van Rensburg, who has complied with the requirements for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Embodied Well-Being, a Prosilience Program for Call Center Agents, prepared under my supervision with Professor Mart Monroe as co-supervisor. In his thesis, the candidate investigated how somatic movement practices can enhance the subjective well-being of call center agents by fostering stress prosilience. The study examined how the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, alongside the brittle, anxious, and non-linear conditions of contemporary workplaces impact the abilities of call center agents to manage stress. Grounded in a constructivist paradigm and employing a phenomenographic research design, the thesis explored body-minded engagement in workplace well-being. By integrating Laban-Bartenieff movement studies, Lesak kinesensics, Skinner release technique, Horton technique, and tap dancing into an embodied prosilience program, the candidate demonstrates how embodiment can serve as a strategy for stress navigation towards subjective well-being. The findings contribute to discourse on somatic movement interventions in workplace well-being. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Jaden Lyle King, who has complied with the requirements of the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Creative Writing with a novel entitled Echoes of the Displaced and a thesis entitled Humming to the Rhythm of the Terrors, Reflections of Reality in Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings, prepared under my supervision. In his thesis, the candidate discussed the concept of a heterocosm and explored how heterocosms in epic fantasy may function as ideologically charged spaces from which to examine concerns and anxieties in manifest reality. By engaging in close textual analysis with The Way of Kings, with reference to the non-canonical earlier drafts of The Way of Kings Prime and Dragon's Steel Prime, this thesis highlights the evolution of Sanderson's ideological heterocosm and demonstrates how epic fantasy can be both a site of subversion and an avenue of intellectual engagement with political and historical realities. In his full-length novel, Echoes of the Displaced, a very accomplished work which was acclaimed by all the examiners, the candidate constructs a heterocosm that represents issues similar to those found in Sanderson's work, namely power binaries, arbitrary caste systems, the plight of displaced people, and magic as a tangible and exploitable resource. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Simwana Said, who has complied with the requirement for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Farmer Livestock Keepers, Land Use Conflict in the Kilombero Valley Floodplain, Morogoro Region, Tanzania, 1980 to 2022. In her thesis, the candidate examined land conflicts between small-scale farmers and livestock keepers in Tanzania's Morogoro region, highlighting in particular certain structural factors such as weak land administration as exacerbating the conflict. The candidate argues that the root causes of the conflicts are the contradictions in customary land ownership and class-based material interest in capital and labor. To frame the study conceptually, the candidate used a Marxist political economy framework alongside anthropological and development perspectives to critique capitalism and neoliberalism as facets of regime protection and elite preservation. By grappling with the dynamics of conflict and the politics of land governance and positioning these within the broader debates on globalization and neoliberalism, the thesis adds another dimension to land conflicts in the region of the South. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidates.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Zolofelo Joshua Kobedi, who has complied with the requirement of Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Space, Infrastructure and Budgets, a case of roads and stormwater maintenance in the city of Ekurhuleni, South Africa, 2000 to 2020, prepared under the supervision of Professor Nolene Murray-Cook. In this thesis, the candidate argues that infrastructure maintenance is at the heart of developmental local government in South Africa. Using Henry Lefebvre's concept in his book, The Protection of Space, the candidate's research explored urban planning, centrally arguing the question of politics and the political and the positioning that infrastructure is a function of budgets, which in turn produces space. The thesis introduces a triple nexus of space, infrastructure, and budget. This is an innovative contribution to South African cities. Research through an in-depth investigation into the roads and stormwater maintenance budget in the city of Ekurhuleni between 2000 and 2020. As a municipal official, the candidate recognizes how apartheid fundamentally damaged the local government's spatial environment. The thesis is an effort to pursue spatial justice in post-apartheid South Africa. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice President, I introduce to you Carol Kuhn, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Digital Remediation in Contemporary Sculpture Practice, Human Technology Co-Creation, prepared under my supervision and with Professor Amanda de Prier as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate presented a hermeneutic interpretation of the praxis of traditionally trained sculptors now working in a post-digital reality. The thesis examines digital technology's mediating role to show how the infolding of digitized bodies and embodied technologies form a co-creating, non-linear, effective interaction between the sculptor, digital device, and material. In this remediated hybrid reality, sculptor-digital technology relations characterize a post-digital reassemblage defined by the notion of agentic matter, constituting a performative sense of becoming with the digital. Post-phenomenology theory was used to highlight digital fabrication technology's multi-stable conditions of use and to interpret sculptors' intentions and materially situated relationality with the device. The study shows that sculptors' embodied interactions occur through, with, alongside, and towards digital technologies, and the neo-material aesthetic arising from this agentic entangled system of physical and non-tangible matter re-territorializes contemporary sculpture within the digital paradigm. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Daniela Margraaf, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Pivotal Players or Passive Pawns, the Foreign Policy of Small Island Developing States in the Indo-Pacific vis-à-vis major players. In her thesis, the candidate critically investigated the foreign policy behavior of 4 Indo-Pacific small island developing states, Solomon Islands, Fiji, Seychelles, and Mauritius between 2017 and 2024. The study challenges the dominant narrative in traditional scholarship, which views small states as passive actors and offers an account that foregrounds their agency instead. To frame the thesis conceptually, the candidate engages with an emblematic framework of traditional assumptions of small states' foreign policy behavior. Through a thematic analysis of official government speeches and elite interviews, the thesis finds that the selected small island developing states consistently transcend traditional dependent foreign policy models by enacting the roles of pioneer and activist challenger, particularly so in the domain of climate change and environmental politics. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Nadine Lauren Moore, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in History with a thesis titled Brown versus Bantu Education, Evaluating Educational Reform Through the Press, prepared under my supervision. In her thesis, the candidate critically evaluated the paradoxical relationship between the United States and South Africa in the 1950s through the lens of newspaper reporting on educational reforms. This thesis adds to transnational contextual understanding by reflecting on historical similitudes and contrasting approaches and perceptions related to segregated education. It includes an evaluation of the shared struggle over educational control, an articulation of the magnitude of the loss of black perspectives in South Africa as a result of apartheid censorship, an illustration of how the persistent Cold War narrative of America's exceptionalism was a misnomer from the South African perspective. The thesis contributes to a more accurate and holistic understanding of the long trajectory of comparative history between the United States and South Africa. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Zama Moyo, who has complied with requirements for the Doctor of Degree of Philosophy with a thesis titled The Moral Plausibility of South Africa's National Development Plan, a Relations-Based Approach, prepared under my supervision and the supervision of Victoria Graham. In the thesis, the candidate evaluated key aspects of the National Development Plan, the NDP, in a way that is ethically grounded. Specifically, the candidate appealed to a moral philosophical interpretation of Ubuntu, an African ethic of humanness that roughly prescribes harmonious relationships as intrinsically valuable ends, to make realistic recommendations about improving the NDP. These improvements include conceiving of development as including a process in which policymakers relate harmoniously amongst themselves and citizens relate harmoniously with policymakers, transcending the familiar focus on what policymakers owe citizens. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Yeokai Lioba Muruzi, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Evaluating the Effectiveness of Protection Orders in Preventing Further Victimization of Female Survivors of Domestic Violence in the city of Tshwane, South Africa, which was prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidate critically evaluated the efficacy of domestic violence protection orders in ensuring survivors' safety and well-being. The interim and final protection orders were found to be effective to a great extent, as the majority of the survivors reported that they were protected against repeated incidents of abuse and felt safe. However, the protection order's inefficacy was linked to continuous sharing of living space with the perpetrators, a lack of adequate knowledge on the purpose of the orders, and a lack of legal consequences for breaching the protection order. The study recommends that the law should enforce compliance with protection orders and act when they are violated. Given that the social workers were identified in the study as vital, the research developed practice guidelines to be utilized by social workers when assisting survivors to obtain and navigate protection orders. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Thank
you. Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Nontando Ndlovu, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Colonial Gender Structures as a Contributing Factor in Influencing the Political Leadership and Landscape in Zimbabwe, prepared under the supervision of Professor Corey Villinger. In this thesis, the candidate examined how gendered colonial power structures have contributed to shaping gender transformation in the political leadership landscape. It argues that gendered colonial power structures have hindered gender transformation in Zimbabwe's political leadership landscape. The candidate used decolonial intersectional feminist theory to establish that current legal and policy frameworks for gender equality, those that govern women's political participation and representation, are inadequate, as they fail to address underlying historical and structural inequalities that frame the realities of women in post-colonial Zimbabwe. The study finds that these colonial continuities tend to weaken efforts to advance gender transformation. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Craimo Penzura, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Personal Name and Immortality Among Shona People, an African Philosophical Inquiry, prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidate examined the Shona people's philosophical thoughts on personal names and immortality. The candidate argued that the personal names, if utilized correctly, can enable immortality through the practice of namesaking, a subcategory of naming. In the Shona metaphysical thinking, namesaking symbolically means perpetuating one's existence. In reconstructing the preceding with philosophical argumentation, the candidate formulated the namesaking theory of human immortality as a novel approach to solving human beings' problems of finality. To conceptually frame this theory, the candidate employed hermeneutic and conversational methods to interpret and analyze the intricate relationship between personal names and death and the belief in life after death. The thesis successfully creates a new body of knowledge that can alleviate the fear of finality and inspire human beings regarding the perennial question of immortality. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Bhavani Sarveshwari Pillai, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with the title Using Images to Support Communication in Aphasia Rehabilitation, prepared under the supervision of Prof. Jeannie van der Lind and with myself as co-supervisor. In this thesis, the candidate explored and evaluated how speech-language pathologists select and use images with adults living with aphasia. These adult preferences for image types used in daily communication and their experience with self-capture using mobile phones. It found that image clarity and color are crucial considerations for speech-language therapists and adults living with aphasia. Notably, South African speech-language therapists considered cultural and religious orientations more than their international counterparts. While adults living with aphasia valued images based on their meaning and communication needs, the study also revealed that self-captured photographs often lacked sufficient context. In response, the candidate developed a framework for image considerations and recommendations when creating and selecting images. This work underscores the need for collaborative and systematic approaches to designing and selecting functional image-based communication supports for adults living with aphasia. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Mr. Hugo Randinho, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled Exploring the Environmental Justice Rural Development Nexus, the Quest for Sustainable Livelihoods in Zimbabwe, prepared under my supervision. In his thesis, the candidate explores the manifold ways that asymmetrical power relations stymie the quest for sustainable rural livelihoods in Zimbabwe. Drawing on theories of political ecology and political economy, the thesis explores how a political ecology framework could address dominant power dynamics identified as the primary causes of environmental injustice. Additionally, the thesis contributes to ongoing academic and policy discussions on environmental governance and sustainable rural livelihood strategies by providing fresh perspectives on issues of informal communities, injustice, and exclusion. The thesis suggests that governments and policymakers should embrace environmental justice perspectives while formulating sustainable livelihood development strategies. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidates.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Macy Alfina Rasakanya, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Improving Existing Water Supply Systems to Enhance Water Availability and Accessibility in Rural Communities, a case of the Mankweng Cluster, Polokwane Municipality in South Africa, prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidate examined the persistent water scarcity challenges facing rural communities, investigating how water infrastructures, associated technical inefficiencies, poor management, and limited institutional responsiveness contribute to unreliable water availability and access. Grounded in development and sustainable perspectives, the research evaluates existing water infrastructures and how these can be improved to ensure consistent and equitable service delivery. A key contribution of the thesis is the innovative solution termed a rotational monocrystalline solar panel system designed to improve groundwater abstraction by ensuring efficient and consistent solar energy capture. This novel intervention offers a sustainable, low-maintenance response to water supply challenges. The study contributes to the development of scholarship and policy by providing solutions that enhance water accessibility and strengthen resilience in water-stressed regions of Africa. Mr. Vice Chancellor, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Daniel Obakeng Setsile, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Assessing the Policy Shifts of Bilateral Investment Treaties from Traditional North-South to New Models of South-South Investments, Implications for South Africa and the Global South, prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidates provided a nuanced analysis of patterns, trends, and trajectories of investment treaty practices. For its analytical and conceptual framing, the thesis adopted a multidisciplinary methodological approach and an eclectic mix of disruptive innovation and rational choice theoretical frameworks for understanding treaty practices. In this context, the findings show that South Africa's termination of bilateral investment treaties and the promulgation of the Investment Act of 2015 are both disruptive and innovative. The thesis therefore concludes that the future viability of BIT models, whether they be North-South or South-South, will continue to be contested unless designed to strike a balance between choice and necessity. This entails considering foreign investors' interests while respecting the host state's responsibility to regulate investment policies in the public interest. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidates.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Nontle Tracy Sabisi, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled An Exploration of the Perceptions of Role Players in the Criminal Justice System regarding electronic monitoring as a sentencing option for low-risk offenders, prepared under the supervision of Professor Karen Boyens. In her thesis, the candidate examined the use of electronic monitoring for low-risk offenders as an alternative to imprisonment in South Africa. To frame the thesis, the candidate used three theories, namely Sykes' deprivation model, Farabi's model of corrections, and Cohen and Felson's routine activities theory. The viability, benefits, and challenges of electronic monitoring were explored following a mixed methods research approach. Through this study, the potential of electronic monitoring to alleviate prison overcrowding, reduce the workload of community corrections officials, enhance offender rehabilitation, and offer cost-effective alternatives to imprisonment while addressing critical operational and ethical concerns were realized. This pioneering study contributes to transformative insights, laying a foundation for integrating electronic monitoring into South Africa's criminal justice system as a feasible sentencing option for low-risk offenders. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Tembenkosi Peter Sengwani, who has complied with requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled The Design of an Outpatient Harm Reduction Intervention for the Management of Alcohol Use Disorders in South Africa, prepared under my supervision. The candidate conducted intervention research grounded on a harm reduction approach to develop a contextually appropriate outpatient harm reduction intervention for the management of alcohol use disorders in South Africa. A scoping review provided a comprehensive synthesis of relevant literature informing the understanding of alcohol harm reduction strategies in the Global South and the applicability to South Africa. Data were collected through semi-structured interviews with service users and a web-based survey with service providers. The findings were triangulated to identify and prioritize harms that could be addressed through the intervention. The study developed 10 structured and embedded sessions forming the prototype outpatient intervention. Key results show that the individuals experience various harms due to harmful alcohol use, which the intervention aims to mitigate. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Lawrence Neyman, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Evaluating Data Classification Methods for Chloropleth Maps in South Africa, a Usability Study prepared under the supervision of Professor Serena Kutsia. In this thesis, the candidate assessed the suitability of different data classification methods on chloropleth maps for effectively visualizing service demand in the metropolitan municipalities of South Africa. Such maps are typically used by decision makers to optimize the distribution of outlets for improved access to services. The study found that respondents were more likely to provide correct answers when presented with maps prepared with the quantiles and natural breaks data classification methods, suggesting that these would make it easier to interpret the population distribution in South Africa. According to the goodness of variance fit calculation, natural breaks and geometric interval data classification methods are optimal. The results contribute to an understanding of how maps should be prepared to interpret South Africa's dispersed and unequally distributed population correctly. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Alexandra Maria Spinovich, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Evidence-Based Clinical Practice Guidelines for Communication Strategies to Support End-of-Life Decision-Making by Persons with Aphasia, prepared under my supervision and with Professor Shakila Dada as co-supervisor. In her thesis, the candidate used an exploratory sequential mixed methods design to develop evidence-based clinical practice guidelines for speech-language pathologists to support persons with aphasia to make end-of-life decisions. Using the framework of evidence-based practice, evidence regarding communication strategies to support end-of-life decision-making by persons with aphasia was gathered from 3 sources. Research evidence was obtained using a scoping review of the literature, while clinicians' expertise was harnessed through focus group discussions. The preferences of persons with aphasia and their significant others was gathered using Q methodology. An aggregative synthesis of the information obtained was conducted and used to inform the development of the guidelines. The developed guidelines were praised by stakeholders and found to be of high quality. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Isabella Yakuba Swart, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in English with a thesis entitled The South African Lady and Die Boerevrou, a comparison of the race and gender discourse within popular white women's reading in South Africa, 1920 to 1929, prepared under the supervision of my colleague, Professor Corinne Sandwith. In her thesis, the candidate explored the relationship between gender and race in early 20th century South Africa through an investigation of white women's reading cultures in this period. Using an innovative approach, the study examined 2 women's periodicals, one English and one Afrikaans, in relation to the literary texts reviewed and promoted in their pages. It argues that by extending the analysis to a broader yet interconnected body of reading material, we gain a more complete and nuanced insight into the race, class, and gender dynamics which mark this period. It shows how the popular reading materials of white women in South Africa in the 1920s both reflected and shaped contemporary ideas of white womanhood in this period. Mr. Vice Principal, I request that you confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Murangwana Brian Tigere, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Developing Social Work Guidelines for Community Gardens for Persons with Disabilities in Limpopo Province, a social development approach prepared under my supervision. In this thesis, the candidate critically evaluates South Africa's disability policy and social provision for persons with disabilities. The candidate argues that the current disability policy in South Africa excludes persons with disabilities from social work services provision. The guidelines have provided a framework for delivering generic social work services which social development practitioners and community gardens can utilize to uplift the livelihoods of persons with disabilities. To conceptually frame this thesis, the candidate used the ABCD theory and the capabilities approach to understand the availability of socioeconomic assets and the abilities of persons with disabilities to uplift their livelihoods. The approach worked since it highlighted the exclusion of persons with disabilities in mainstream social work services. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Karel Jacobus van Heerden, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy, Digital Culture and Media, with a thesis titled Queering Final Fantasy XIV Online Avatars on Instagram, prepared under the supervision of Professor Amanda Duprier. In this thesis, the candidate explored the dynamics of online identity formation between massively multiplayer online role-playing games and Instagram. The candidate focused on the collaborative construction of identities by players who adopt a queer sensibility in their gaming habits. Through a mixed methods approach, including virtual ethnography, interviews, and case studies, the candidate examined how gamers utilize their avatars to express alternate gender and sexual identities. The key findings highlight the importance of avatar design, role-play, and virtual photography in this process. Gamers create and share virtual images to document and explore their virtual identities, adopting a visual language that draws from and reinterprets photographic conventions. The study also sheds light on the prevalence of erotic role-play in construction, the avatar persona, providing an opportunity for gamers to explore and express their sexualities. Additionally, the research uncovers the significance of social media platforms, particularly Instagram, in facilitating the collaborative construction and performance of identity. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate. Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Arts in Research Psychology, Johann Trotsky. Specializing in creative writing, Gerhard Holzhausen. Specializing in criminology, Tiana Hiscox. Specializing in digital culture and media, Karel Willemse. Specializing in diplomatic studies, Yuliswa Mvebe. Specializing in environmental science and society, Christopher Reiters. Specializing in fine arts, Caitlin LaRue. Tatenda Mapisire. Specializing in international relations, Hosi Kosa. Specializing in philosophy, Nokwanda Kubeka. Ashindaye Muke. Tane Parker. Specializing in political science, Mokhano Leshalabe. Specializing in security studies, Tatenda Mataba. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Arts in Audiology. Charles Ngobeni. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidate has complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Arts in Clinical Psychology. Boipelo Motumi. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Arts in Counseling Psychology. Kayla Bergman Ali. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Arts in Research Psychology. Megan Damon. Kwesi Jonga. Nandipa Shingange. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Arts in Speech Language Pathology. Marinique Gertenbach. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Music in Music Therapy. Kayla Jardim. Sarah Thornton-Dibb. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Social Work. Miriam Mgwedli. Yukai Pedzisa. In healthcare, Annemie Dominic. Karabo Zwane. In social development and policy, Simpiwe Mazibuko. Abigail Mzaidume. Mishai Venerable. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Social Work in Play Therapy, specializing in play-based intervention, Danielle DeBrain. Megan De Jager. Miona de Klerk. Wandile McCleary. Charmane Skuman. Specializing in English. Oh, I'm sorry. We've skipped some. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Arts Honors, specializing in English, Michael Best. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Arts. Tinyiku Baloi. Mulalo Bereda. Caitlin Buerta. Elisna Bass. Vrishti Danlal. Mignon Dutoy. Guguletu Dube. Tristan Fisher. Sayansha Harjunlal. Bokang Giani. Leandri Hubert. Kahindu Kambale. Tawananyasha Karuo. Sibongile Koza. Tsepiso Kumalo. Gianna Kovago. Nonchlanchla Mabuza. Sejal Madanlal. Maboyang Makakane. Selwane Mahakala. Londiwe Mashlobo. Zianda Maseko. Makabongwe Matenjwa. Emanuela Mizwa Mandondo. Naledi Motia. Ntokozo Mzisa. Nokotula Tongwane. Mishlali Ngesha. Pearl Onwuchekwa. Danae Pretorius. Tsakani Sehwe. Pindokushle Sishlangu. Joshua Silber. Tato Sizani. Olwetu Skadi. Asanda Temba. Bohlale Tosago. Lebohang Tubana. Chehofatso Chale. Anneke van der Walt. Carmen van Niekerk. Keisha van Wyk. Ansu Welpton. Specializing in law, Shimirai Chapwanya. Carrie Lynn Klaaser. Oscar Freelingsdorf. Lesedi Horse. Anelia Isaacs. Nkwako Lebishi. Chiamo Mabuse. Tobile Mavuso. Sipo Mazibuko. Oropafadzo Museruka. Tandeka Ndube. Tsolo Tsolo. Alicia van der Merwe. Specializing in visual studies, Kefilwe Ntuli. Divine Sibia. Carmia Wagner. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Political Science. Specializing in International Studies, Kayena Marumo. Bontle Maseko.
That's for you, my good sir.
Ntokozo Shabalala. Specializing in Political Studies, Khotatso Mangha. Uacheng Chabangwe. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Social Science. Specializing in Industrial Sociology and Labor Studies, Bradley Ardong. Linford Bailey. Prudence Mlambo. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Social Work. Tabang Ramalepe. Anye van Dijk.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let us give our graduates a big hand for their hard work and perseverance. Thank you. So now can I please ask our graduates to thank their families, friends, partners, and spouses for their support over these years. Thank you. We have now come to the end of today's proceedings. Before we close, I wish to invite all of you present for liquid refreshments afterwards in the marquee in front of this Rembrandt Hall. You are requested to please stand for the singing of the national anthem and to remain standing until the assembly has been dissolved and the academic procession has left this auditorium. The words of the national anthem will appear on the screens and the inside back cover of your program. May I please request you to rise for the national anthem. By the powers vested in me, I hereby dissolve this assembly of the University of Pretoria.
Gaudeamus igitur, Juvenes dum sumus. Gaudeamus igitur, Juvenes dum sumus. Post jucundum juventutem, post molestam senectutem, nos
Make today matter.